You awaken with nausea surging in your throat. It isn't seasickness. It is the stench of refuse mingled with rotting offal, decomposing under the sweltering heat of Manhattan 1660. Welcome to New Amsterdam, no place for the faint of heart. Here no one is like you. Look to your left, a Jew whispers prayers in constant dread of banishment. Look to your right, a French butcher brandishes a blood-stained cleaver. And ahead, the tar-blackened muzzles of Dutch muskets, aimed at anyone daring to obstruct the flow of commerce. No law exists to shield you from a sucker punch or a dagger in the dark. There is no communal faith, nor a common tongue to cry for help. You are merely a lost soul in the most ruthless social experiment in human history. New Amsterdam is not a city in the modern sense. It is a living entity, a survival engine that grinds down the weak and molds survivors into a new breed. People huddle here, not out of love, but because they have nowhere left to go. They are Jews expelled from Brazil, German peasants destitute after the wars, or French Huguenots fleeing religious persecution. They are thrust into a cramped high-tension space where a single wrong look can ignite bloodshed. Yet miraculously from this utter chaos, one of the most powerful cities on the planet took shape. We will not merely look back at history through dry statistics. I will lead you straight into the dusty forts, the deafeningly rowdy taverns, and that fateful wooden palisade, the very structure that would later give birth to the name Wall Street. The ultimate question is not how they lived, but this. If this chaotic experiment had collapsed, then would the modern world you enjoy today ever have existed? If you crave historical reenactments with the rawest, most authentic perspective, do not forget to subscribe as we venture further into the shadows of New Amsterdam.
Shipment ready for the sea serpent.
Move those furs to
To understand why this black hole of chaos did not self-destruct on day one, you must discard all illusions of liberty or human rights. New Amsterdam was not built on noble ideals. It was founded upon one thing colder and more powerful than any god: money. In 1624, when the first members of the Dutch West India Company set foot on the island of Manhattan, they brought no constitution or Bible to found a nation. They brought ledgers and scales. To them, this island was not a new homeland, but a trading post, a money-printing machine situated amidst strategic maritime routes. Here, everything had a price tag. Pelts had a price, oak timber had a price, and the ancestral lands of the indigenous peoples were appraised for a few cheap trinkets. Gradually, greed transcended material goods. Human beings themselves became a specific commodity in the investment portfolio. Ships docked incessantly, discharging wretched souls from across the globe onto the wharves. There were those seeking to escape debt, fugitives wanted across Europe, and those brought in shackles without any choice at all. They disembarked to face a land without clear law or social safety nets, greeted only by suspicious glares and the vast chasm between ethnicities. Each carried a different god in their heart, but beneath their feet was the same mire of pragmatism. The Dutch authorities of the time cared little for who you were, what you believed, or who your ancestors were. Their only question was, how much profit can you generate? If the answer was enough, you were permitted to exist. If not, you were simply erased from the system. This was not a society. It was a living marketplace, where a person's worth was measured not by honor or morality, but by the efficiency of the figures they brought to the balance sheet. This coldness was the precursor to an economic system that would later dominate the globe. But at that moment, it was a brutal test of survival. If you were placed on the scales of the West India Company today, what would your true value be? Try walking down the main street of New Amsterdam on a rainy afternoon. Your feet sink deep into a slurry of mud mixed with animal entrails from the slaughterhouses and raw sewage dumped directly into the thoroughfare. The rancid stench rises under the humid heat, tightening your chest. But that isn't the worst of it. At the corner ahead, a crowd gathers around two men lunging at each other like wild beasts. One screams in Dutch, the other retorts in an alien Scandinavian tongue. They do not understand each other, but rage requires no translator. Thwack! A thunderous punch sends one sprawling into the black mire. Bright red blood gushing out, and dissolving into the filth beneath his feet. You look around for a guardsman, a constable, or at least a cry for help. There is none. The onlookers merely cast indifferent glances before weaving through the crowd to resume their business. This apathy is not born of malice. In New Amsterdam, compassion is a luxury that can cost you your life. Just as you recover from the violence, another sound echoes from the harbor, colder and far more haunting. It is the clinking of iron chains against the wooden hulls of merchantmen. A group is led down limbs, shackled, their eyes containing an ultimate emptiness. They do not resist, for resistance here only leads to a swifter death. A trader steps forward nonchalantly, prying open a woman's mouth to inspect her teeth, prodding the muscles of a young man as if checking the quality of a carcass at market. In that moment, you realize the rawest truth of New Amsterdam. The boundary between a free citizen and a piece of merchandise is as thin as a hair. You might be a shopkeeper today, but with one stroke of misfortune, one unpayable debt, you could be the one appraised on that wooden block tomorrow. New Amsterdam taught a bitter lesson. When profit is the sole metric, human dignity is merely a variable that can be discarded at any time. Are you certain you will always remain the observer? Or will you too one day be appraised by a stranger? The chaos of New Amsterdam did not vanish by miracle. It was subdued by a more organized and terrifying force, fear. Behind these muddy streets loomed the specter of the Dutch West India Company, a multinational corporation with its own army, the right to mint coin, and the power to dispense justice. They did not come to sow kindness or build a heaven on earth. They came to establish an order that served the flow of capital. The man sent to realize that ambition was Peter Stuyvesant, a director general with a peg leg and a spirit as hard as granite. Under Stuyvesant, New Amsterdam began to transform. Soldiers no longer loitered aimlessly at the docks. They appeared at every corner not to protect you, but to ensure not a single guilder of tax went uncollected. Every transaction, from a single pelt to a bottle of rum, had to be recorded, stamped, and taxed. New laws were enacted not to create justice, but to create predictability for profit. People no longer dared to brawling openly in the streets, knowing the price was a brutal lashing or immediate banishment from the island. Districts began to fracture clearly: areas for the merchant elite, quarters for craftsmen, and zones for the living property freshly off the ships. The human trade was no longer a messy affair of haggling. It was professionalized, ledger-tracked, and state-sanctioned. This is the most frightening aspect of civilization. When a system is strong enough to suppress individual violence, it is also strong enough to legalize exploitation on a massive scale. You watch the town run smoother by the day and realize you are living inside a gargantuan machine. Everything behavior faith. Human value is calibrated to fit the gears of the economy. You are no longer a free individual. You are a unit in the West India Company's profit cycle. The question remains, are you living in a society to develop yourself? Or are you merely existing as a consumable component in a machine designed to wring out your labor to the very last drop? There was no great explosion or revolution to mark the shift, but you can feel it seeping through the cobblestones of New Amsterdam every day. The roads are just as muddy, the sea breeze just as salty, but the people are no longer the same. Step into a seaside tavern, once a hub of boisterous laughter and endless tales of adventure. Now the air is thick with calculation. People speak less, their voices lower, and more direct. The question, "Where are you from?" days, has been entirely replaced by, "What can you do?" In a dark corner, you overhear two merchants haggling over a newly arrived laborer. They don't mention his name, his interests, or his pain. They speak only of stamina, cold tolerance, and depreciation value. This coldness radiates to the construction sites. You see a gang of porters working under the blistering sun, sweat mingling with road dust. One stumbles from exhaustion, and immediately another is shoved in to replace him without a word of inquiry or a second of hesitation. No argument, no explanation. Simply the replacement of a broken tool with a new one. Even the children playing by the timber piles are no longer innocent. They mimic the adults pretending to hold auctions, pretending to bid on broken toys. The mindset that everything has a price has bled into the marrow of the next generation. Your initial resistance or shock has become a laughable eccentricity. New Amsterdam has taught its denizens a supreme rule. This place does not run on right or wrong or human sentiment, but on labor efficiency. To survive, you are forced to discard the superfluous parts of being human to become a useful entity. But what is the true cost? If you stay here long enough, how much of your soul will remain before you? To begin to look at the person next to you as a mere figure on a balance sheet. Finally, you leave the windswept streets of New Amsterdam, but the sense of its presence haunts you like a ghost. History is not always forged by heroes or glittering ideals. Sometimes it is molded by silent compromises and the cruelest of systems. New Amsterdam did not collapse or vanish into the void like so many ancient cities. It endured because it worked. It did not require justice to persist. It only required the flow of profit to continue, and people willing to adapt to survive. In time, these muddy streets will be paved with solid stone. The rotting timber houses will soar into skyscrapers that eclipse the sun. That old defensive wooden wall will be torn down, but its spirit will remain forever under the name Wall Street. The financial heart beating incessantly to pump the lifeblood of global capital. The ruthless principles formed in 1660 did not disappear. They were simply draped in expensive suits and more complex algorithms. A titan of a city would rise from those foundations. A city where opportunity and brutality walk hand in hand, where an individual's value is still regularly weighed on the market scales. You may call it New York, but if you look closely through the glass of the high-rises, you will still see the shadows of strangers huddling together in the same indifference from 3 centuries ago. History is a sophisticated loop, and the most sobering realization lies not in what has passed, but in the reality you currently inhabit. Our modern world still operates on the rules of value and efficiency, born from that chaotic experiment on Manhattan. Thus, the final question is not where New Amsterdam went, but this. Where do you stand within this massive system? If one day the system decides to reappraise you, will you have anything left to keep for yourself? New Amsterdam was only the beginning. In the next chapter, we will witness the moment this city changed hands, when profit collided with the ambitions of war to officially give birth to New York. Subscribe so you don't miss the next installment, for the story of human value still has its darkest chapters ahead.